This 2015 Passat TDI 2.0 has been a pain. The clutch went out and I had catastrophic clutch failure, so I decided to replace everything. I read that Luke clutches are better than Sachs. Sachs is what was on the car, of course. So I replaced the dual mass flywheel as well as the pressure plate and friction plate. They're installed. That's a Luck clutch set now. The new DMF flywheel and everything. They're a big pain because they're self-adjusting, and so you have to compress the fingers, the spring on the pressure plate as you install it. Otherwise, it self-adjusts out. Those little bit of yellow springs, you can see 3 of them there. They have to be all the way compressed if you can get them that far. That's what I've got. I had no end of trouble. This is the second time getting this thing apart, taking it apart, trying to fix it. Before, I just could not get enough clutch to get it to disengage. But now that was with the Sachs clutch pack. I've since put the Luke on it, or Luke on it instead, or Luck, however you say it. So this is the new slave cylinder installed. Of course, it's internal, so you got to take the transmission apart to get to the stupid thing. Bleeding it is a pain. I recommend bleeding it on the transmission before you put the transmission back in. You see my little Mighty Vac bottle there with brake fluid. You can't see anything in this hose, but it's all brake fluid. There's no bubbles in there. Now, you have to install the slave cylinder before you try to bleed it. And I'll show you why, because I took the old one apart. If you try to bench bleed this just to make your life easier when you get the darn thing back on the car, the problem is you can't bleed it without putting it in the transmission. Because if you try, I've disassembled the old one. I had to remove a piece up here. There's no way to get the silly thing apart without destroying the old one, but who cares? The old one shot anyway. Might even be able to see some of the fibers where the friction plate flew apart. Anyway, so this piece, you'll notice, has a ring in there. It's almost an O-ring, but it's got that little jut out there. Well, that goes in here just like this. If you look on the back side, you can see how you've got basically an O-ring groove, but then right over here, it juts out, and that's where that O-ring goes. So this sits around, on the back like this. That O-ring fits right down in there. And then there's these little plastic clips that are supposed to hold this in place. The problem is, if you put pressure into this tube, you'll end up with a leak because those plastic clips aren't strong enough to actually hold that metal against this back and keep that ring compressed enough to keep it from leaking. So you'll think your new slave cylinder is bad. Now, when you apply this, you install it, assemble it into the transmission, then of course the 3 nuts there, 3 bolts, hold this plastic piece up against the transmission and then push this up against the transmission too. So what that does effectively is clamp these 2 things together where you're not relying on those stupid little plastic catches anymore to keep the backside from leaking. Now here's the other fun part. This is the front side. It goes around this like this. So here's the front side. It goes on here. It's got the bearing and everything on it. You can see the seals right there. Well, if you know anything about seals, you know that these seals only seal in one direction. So if you're trying to bleed the system, you say to heck with it, I'm going to get my Mighty Vac out and suck all the air out of here. Well, good luck. Because what's going to happen is, even like this, the seals in here that are just like these, I'm sure, are one-way seals, and you can suck air past this seal. I know because I've done it. I've sucked a lot of air past these stupid seals. Why they designed it that way, I don't know. It's a big pain. I definitely recommend bleeding this thing before you install it in the car, but bleed it on the transmission.